These are the video. Okay. We're going to move on. We're going to progress on. I'm going to record this video.
Nah, I'm out.
Okay. I started to record this. So, if you need to catch up on it, I will post it up on our Facebook page.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Where did you find buy a house? On the site. I don't know anything about that part of the just I didn't really go after you. Not much else there now. They're working that. They work back that side. The business is out of Dover Plain.
Okay. That's what I do.
But they can do it.
That's what I can do is you record it, and we'll see what we can do after that. All right, so we were on verse 13 and following. Was it Donna?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, Donna. Verse
Okay.
13 and following.
13 through 22. In my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshiped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. I, Daniel, was troubled in spirit, and the visions that passed through my mind disturbed me. I approached one of those standing there and asked him the meaning of all this. So he told me and gave me the interpretation of these things. The four great beasts are four kings that will rise from the earth, but the holy people of the Most High will receive the kingdom and will possess it forever. Yes, forever and ever. Then I wanted to know the meaning of the fourth beast, which was different from all the others and most terrifying, with its iron teeth and bronze claws, the beast that crushed and devoured its victims and trampled underfoot whatever was left. I also wanted to know about the 10 horns on its head and about the other horn that came up, before which 3 of them fell. The horn that looked more imposing than the others and that had eyes and a mouth that spoke boastfully. As I watched, this horn was waging war against the holy people and defeating them, until the Ancient of Days came and pronounced judgment in favor of the holy people of the Most High, and the time came when they possessed the kingdom.
Thus he said, the fourth beast will be a fourth.
And the last bit there, verses 23 and following, I'll just read that. Thus he said, as for the fourth beast, there shall be a fourth kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all the kingdoms, and it shall devour the whole earth. Go ahead. If you can hear me, go ahead. I think it's supposed to be a little late.
Yeah.
As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings shall rise, and another shall arise after them. He shall be different from the former ones, and shall put down 3 kings. He shall speak words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and shall think to change the times and the law. And they shall be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. But the court shall sit in judgment, and his dominion shall be taken away, to be consumed and destroyed to the end. And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. His kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Here is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly alarmed me, and my color changed. But I kept the matter in my heart. All right. So, Daniel 7, we have a vision of how many beasts?
4.
4 beasts. The first one is like a lion with the wings like an eagle. Starts to stands up and talks like a man. Second is a bear on his side with ribs in his mouth. He is told to go and eat and devour the other kingdoms. The third is a leopard with the wings of a bird, has 4 heads, and is given rulership. And the fourth is an iron beast with teeth and 10 horns. And then a little horn pops up among his horns and knocks out 3 of the horns. That little horn has the eyes of a man and speaks boastful words. The little horn wars against the holy people, but then judgment happens, and the kingdom of God is given to the saints of the Most High. Now, the dominion of the little horn. Anybody remember how is the dominion of the little horn? There's a time period that the little horn has dominion. Did you remember what it said about the time period that the little horn has dominion?
Time and times again and a half.
Time and times and a half a time. We'll come back to that later. But that's an important thing to just mark down about this vision. All right. So, when Daniel asked the interpretation of these beasts, specifically of the last beast, he's told the last beast, oh, and that's right, there's a vision of one like a son of man coming in the clouds of glory, to whom is given dominion and honor, and that son of man rules over the nations and has an everlasting kingdom that will not be destroyed. Okay? Now maybe you see some parallels between Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7. What are some parallels that you see between these two visions? Similar.
4 kingdoms and the 4 beasts.
There's 4 kingdoms and 4 beasts, right? Actually, well, let's say there's 4 sections of a statue and 4 beasts. The 4 sections of the statue are representative of kingdoms. The 4 beasts, I'm going to say, but Daniel doesn't say it explicitly, the 4 beasts are also 4 kingdoms. We know that the last beast is a kingdom, okay? We know that the Son of Man institutes a kingdom that will never end. So I think it's logical to say that these 4 beasts each represent also 4 kingdoms, okay? What else is parallel between these 2 chapters?
Destruction at the end.
The four kingdoms are destroyed, and they're destroyed by something heavenly, right? There's a rock that's not cut out by God, and there's a person who comes who is divine. He is riding on the clouds of heaven. He has dominion and authority. Okay? So we have 4 kingdoms, and they're ultimately destroyed by something from heaven. And that thing from heaven, if it's the rock, it grows into a mountain that fills the whole earth, and forever, right? And the Son of Man is given dominion over a kingdom forever, okay? Here's my argument. I'm not the only one to make this argument. These 2 dreams are of the same thing, okay? But from a different perspective. Okay? The head of gold is the Lion Kingdom, okay? The chest and arms of silver is the Bear Kingdom. The thighs of bronze are the leopard with the wings of a bird, and the legs of the statue, the iron and clay, are the beast with iron teeth and bronze claws and all that stuff, right? and the rock is the Son of Man. Okay? Now, I'm not going crazy here. This is the most common way to understand these two passages, that they're each referring to the same kingdoms, the same four kingdoms. Okay? What?
Sorry to always be asking.
No, that's how it is.
But in chapter 2, Daniel had told Nebuchadnezzar that he was the first king.
Bingo.
Yes, so that is.
So let's write that down. Babylon.
That he was the first king of what?
When he was interpreting the dream, he told Nebuchadnezzar that the gold had represented him.
Yes.
Oh, he came up with
Nebuchadnezzar, right,
Yes.
yes.
So
Okay.
Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom,
Yeah.
Babylon, is the head of gold. Okay? Chapter 2 makes that very clear. Okay? Not a coincidence, actually, that in real life we know that the symbol of the kingdom of Babylon was a lion with wings of an eagle. Okay? So this is not like rocket surgery, right? This always works really well. Okay? The head of gold, Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, Babylon, is the lion eagle kingdom. Okay? It stands up, it's given the heart of it was walks on all fours, it stands up, and it's then given the heart of a man to speak the words of a man. If you read back, Nebuchadnezzar actually winds up contracting this disease, which makes him walk on all fours. He winds up running outside, his hair growing, his nails growing, right? And eventually God restores to him the heart of a man, it says, right? And he's able to then speak the words of a man again. This is the same thing, right? Excellent. Okay. So the question then is, what's the kingdom that takes over the world from Babylon? Well, in the story of the handwriting on the wall, we find out that the kingdom that takes over from Babylon is the kingdom of the Medes and the Persians. Okay? The Medes and the Persians. This is King Darius, under whom Daniel winds up going to the lion's den. Okay? And other kings.
And then he tell the Jews they could go back.
Yeah, they.
Yes, right. It's under the latter, after Daniel, maybe after Daniel's death, but it's under the Persian portion of the Mede-Persian Empire. The Medes and the Persians were one empire of two people, and the Persians wind up sort of assuming the roles of the Medes. The Medes wind up decreasing, the Persians wind up increasing. There's not really a fight that transitions between them.
And the Greeks came in.
Whoa, Donna, gold star to Donna.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Donna.
I didn't know that. The Greek.
The Greeks, yeah, the Empire of Greece winds up conquering the Empire of the Persians, right? If you watched, don't, if you haven't, but then over the movie 300, and the story of the Battle of Thermopylae, and that's the Greeks conquering the Persians, right? Through a series of battles. And then what world empire conquers Greece? The Romans.
Yeah.
Rome.
So the Roman Empire. And what Daniel tells us, excellent, yeah, Rome, good. What Daniel tells us is that it's during this empire that a rock will be cut out without human hands that will roll down and will destroy all the other world kingdoms, right? It'll destroy the culture left behind by these kingdoms and will, in fact, wind up taking over the world. Okay?
Christianity.
Bingo, right?
Yeah.
One like the Son of Man, right? The rock is the Son of Man.
Rock and
Right.
roll.
And now Jesus goes through his entire ministry. What's his favorite phrase to call himself? What does he call himself all the time? The Son of Man, right? Jesus says, I'm the Son of Man. The Son of Man came to seek and to save that which was lost, right? The Son of Man. Now, some people think that the Son of Man was a way for Jesus to just be really humble. Oh, I'm just a guy, right? I'm no big deal. I'm just a guy.
Yeah.
When I read this, I see Daniel 7 all the way, right? Jesus is saying, I'm the Son of Man. I'm going to take this kingdom down, right?
Mhm.
I'm going to destroy this kingdom. So these two visions, Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7, are the same vision, basically, but with different symbols. And it's a vision of 4 world empires that will, in succession, rule the world of the time, the known world, and that it's at the time of the 4th world empire that the Messiah would arise. Okay? We can go into, there's a lot more detail you can go into here. I mean, obviously, he's got, supposed to have 10 toes. He has 8 toes on my side. Because I'm watching too much Lost. But it's 10 toes. Right now, Daniel doesn't make anything of that. But it's interesting that there's 10 horns, right, for the iron beast, which represent 10 kings of the Roman Empire. Huh?
The tribes.
Well, the 10 horns represent 10 kings of the Roman Empire, a succession of 10 kings, and that during the reign of the 10th king, he was going to be tossed out by a little horn, and who supplant 3 horns, right? If you look at all this in connection with Roman history, it's very clear. Like this is so clear. This stuff is so clear, and it fits world history so well that Bible scholars who don't believe that the Bible was inspired by God say that Daniel couldn't possibly have been written during the exile because he knows too much, right? How could he predict so accurately the kingdoms of the world from his vantage point? It had to have been written sometime during the Roman Empire. Because that's the only way that it makes any sense to people who don't believe that God inspires prophecy.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you, does anybody know, like, how much time passed from one vision to the next?
We don't know. We know that it's not too long, although, I mean, so this vision is under Nebuchadnezzar, right?
Mhm, yeah.
I'm thinking it's the same vision.
And it's Belshazzar is the king under whom this vision happens, right? So this vision happens under Nebuchadnezzar. This vision happens under Belshazzar. And I don't remember what his name is, but Belshazzar's father was Nebuchadnezzar's son. Okay? So Belshazzar is Nebuchadnezzar's grandson.
Okay.
So however much time there is,
Yeah,
this
not a long
it's
time.
not a ton of time, it's a couple of generations. Daniel lives a very long time. He winds up serving Belshazzar and Darius the Mede afterwards. So he winds up seeing the first transition.
Wow.
Interesting, and I don't know what I don't even make it right, but the king is named Belshazzar and Daniel's named Belteshazzar. And yeah, I always wonder if like Belshazzar's mom and dad were like sort of naming him after Daniel. I don't know, but in any event, yeah. So we don't know how far apart they are, but they're talking about the same thing: 4 world empires, and during the 4th world empire would come the person that we know of as the Messiah, who would restore Israel to its, the saints of the Most High, the holy people, would be restored. But now, of course, the shocker with the ministry of Jesus is that the holy people who wind up taking over the world aren't Israel, but a new Israel through Jesus, the church, right? So Daniel could not have known that. And in fact, that was one of the shockers of the ministry of Jesus.
And that was the beginning of the end times, you told us.
Right. So
Jesus came.
when Jesus comes is the start of what we know of as the last days. Okay. Now the end times, though, are another question. Okay. And so I'm just going to talk briefly about this. The way that prophecy often works. This is a theological interpretation. Okay, you'll not find this in the Bible. But here's how I understand prophecy to be, is that from a distance, you're looking at a mountain, right? That looks like it's got two peaks, okay? And as you walk closer, and you kind of walk your way around, you get a different perspective on it. Eventually you discover that this was in the haze, now it becomes clearer that there's actually two mountains that you mistaken for one because of your perspective, okay? The farther away you are from the mountain, the more it looks like one mountain. But the closer you get to it, the more you can see that it's actually two mountains, okay? This is a pretty standard understanding of how prophecy often works. The closer you get to it, the more you realize that there's maybe more dimensions to it than you first thought, okay? And you guys remember when I preached out of Matthew chapter 24 the first time a month ago, which I'll be doing the second half of Matthew 24 this Sunday, I mentioned that Jesus gives a prophecy of the destruction of the temple in AD 70, which will happen 4 years after Jesus' death, and the end of time, okay? And the disciples see both of them as being one prophecy, okay? But since AD 70 has passed and time hasn't come to an end, we've come to understand that Jesus was talking about two events that looked like one from that perspective, but now we see are two. And that's the distinction I want to make between the last days and the end times. Okay? They're two events. They're different. They don't refer to the same thing. Here's a way to think about it. Well, I love whiteboards. Whiteboards are my favorite. Okay? This is the last days. Okay? This is the end times. Okay? The end times are a portion of the last days. Or if you look at a timeline, this is the last days, and this is the end times. Okay? The last bit of the end of the last days we call the end times. Now, Daniel in Daniel chapter 7 is talking about both the last days and the end times. And this will make more sense as we go along in the next few chapters. As we go to Daniel chapter 9, it will sort of cover a little bit of this, and then when we go to Daniel chapter 12, this will become very clear. But the little horn turns out to be separated in time from the 10 horns, okay? It's not clear from Daniel chapter 7, but it is clear later on that the little horn is the person that we know of as the Antichrist, okay? The person in the end times who winds up warring against the people of God, who winds up ruling for a time and times and half a time, turns out to be the person that we know of as the Antichrist. So he is separated in time from the 10 horns. Somehow, at the time of the Antichrist, God, through prophecy, sees the kingdom that the little horn rules over as being an extension of the Roman Empire somehow. Okay, it's part of this feat. Okay, it's part of this iron beast. Okay, in the middle of this kingdom, the rock is cut out, destroys the statue, right? And during the time as the rock's becoming the mountain that fills the earth, the little horn winds up coming into play and winds up warring against the holy people, and then the time of judgment happens. And when the time of judgment happens, the little horn is done away with, this kingdom is destroyed, and the kingdom of the rock, the kingdom of the ancient of days, of the Son of Man, winds up becoming the kingdom that fills the whole earth. Daniel 7 without mentioning this, because we're not going to do Daniel 9 tonight. We're going to do Daniel 9 next week. And Daniel 9 kind of backtracks again and hits a little portion of this. Actually, here's a little preview of next week, okay? Here we go. Okay, so we have, right, we have Babylon, we have the Medes and the Persians, we have the Greeks, and we have the Romans, and then we have Christianity, right? This is kind of how God sees history, okay? And there's sort of this revived Roman Empire somehow at the end, and that's where the Antichrist comes in, okay? Daniel chapter 9, we're going to talk about the Greek Empire, okay? So we're going to go back in Daniel chapter 9. We're going to talk about the Greek Empire to some degree, and specifically, we're going to talk about the end of the Greek Empire. And the end of the Greek Empire is going to foreshadow what happens here. Okay, and we'll talk. So some of the things we'll talk about next week will very much be end time things. Okay, although they won't seem like it at first. What am I trying to do?
Confuse us.
What I'm trying to do is to tell you and to make clear, hopefully, that what the Bible says about the end times doesn't start in the book of Revelation. Okay? The book of Revelation is picking up threads from all over the Bible, okay, and very heavily from Daniel. Okay? Jesus pulls very heavily from Daniel. The book of Revelation pulls very heavily from Daniel. Okay? And understanding the prophecies of Daniel gives you what you need to understand the Revelation, right? So that's where we're going with all of this. That makes sense. Yeah. I was kind of rolling along like a rock cut out without human hands. Thoughts, questions? I do want to end by 8:30, so we have about 5 minutes or so. Thoughts or questions about Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7?
Wow, you did quite a thorough job.
Yeah,
A lot to think about.
so much sooner.
Yeah.
I'll say this, what blows my mind every time I study it is how accurate Daniel's predictions were. Okay, and I guess this is what I want to leave you with more than anything else, is that I believe that Daniel was prophesying and writing here, okay? And he prophesied about all of this. And when he prophesied about all of this came true, right? It's really easy, I think, in Christian circles today to say that the prophecies that Jesus made, we'll talk about this on Sunday, I don't want to give away too much, but prophecies that Jesus made and the prophecies that were revealed to John in the book of Revelation are too weird or outlandish or difficult to be something in the future, okay? That the only way that they would have any relevance is if they were just for the people of that time, okay? But I think Daniel shows us something very different, okay? Now, Daniel chapter 2 definitely shows us that God is sovereign even over pagan kings' dreams, right? So that's a cool thing, and it's something we can all hold on to. But Daniel chapter 2, the fullness of Daniel chapter 2 would not be known until well into the history of Christianity, okay? The idea that this rock was going to become a mountain and fill the whole earth would not have been really clear to the 12 apostles. Right? Even if they understood themselves to be part of this rock or part of the mountain that the rock forms.
Yeah.
Even if they understood that, it would be very difficult for them to say, well, we got 120 guys here, people here, how are we going to fill the whole earth? Right?
Yeah, they don't know, they don't understand, but, I mean, they did know that they were supposed to spread the word to the world, and Peter was the rock hindsight.
Right. And so it took a long way into the Christian history to really understand that, dang, this is actually coming true. You know?
Yes.
And we're still not there, right? There's still, I want to talk about this on Sunday, but you know, the gospel, actually last Sunday, last sermon on Matthew 24, the gospel will be preached to all nations and then the end will come, right? This rock becoming a mountain that will fill the entire earth, that is still to come, fully. It still hasn't fully come. And we're living in that tension of the time in between. But Daniel saw it all. And he saw it all perfectly clearly. And what's going to be even more startling is when we get to Daniel chapter, I can't remember if it's chapter 9 or chapter 12. We'll talk about it next week either way. But Daniel actually is going to prophesy within a very small window when Jesus would come. Okay? Well, we know if you're reading the prophecies of Daniel, you're understanding the prophecies of Daniel, you know that Jesus has to come during this time, right? So the start of the Roman Empire started the clock, okay? But Daniel actually also gives the end of the clock in one of his later prophecies. And when, and as you get to the time of Jesus, people are pretty confident that there's not much time left for the Messiah to come. And Jesus comes literally, I mean, in historical terms, Jesus lands on a dime into the prophecies of Daniel. It's staggering how precisely Daniel predicts the coming of Jesus. And when you look at the New Testament, and you keep hearing in the New Testament things like, well, there's been lots of people claiming to be the Messiah, right? In the book of Acts, they talk about Judas the Galilean, or Theudas, or other guys who sort of stood up and said, I'm the Messiah. Why were there so many people claiming to be the Messiah in Jesus' day? A few years before, a few years after. Why? Because they were running out of time, right? The clock was running out, and this is the time when the Messiah has to come. So maybe it's me, right? And so it's like the prophecies of Daniel explain so much for us, not just about the future, but also about Jesus' time.
So he predicts pretty much everything, Jesus being born and also Jesus' second coming?
Yeah.
Or just the second
No,
coming?
he predicts with very great accuracy when Jesus would be on the earth, right?
Will be born.
Right.
Okay.
And then this whole thing, the war against the little horn, Daniel's prophecies are not as clear about that. But now the book of Revelation, book of 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, the prophecies of Jesus in Matthew chapter 24 and 25 help us to look back and say, oh, okay, Daniel was prophesying the end, the rise of the Antichrist. But from Daniel's perspective, it looked like the Antichrist was was right at the same time as the 10 horns, at the end of 10 horns. But it wasn't. There's a gap here that Daniel did not see. There's a space between the two mountains that Daniel could not see from his vantage point.
Daniel didn't prophesy the end times.
Yeah.
Did he think that was going to be the end?
So
I think the end was the kingdom.
Yeah, so we have not we don't have enough yet to say that Daniel prophesied the end times.
Yeah.
I will say Daniel prophesied the end times, and by the time we're done, you'll see that Daniel prophesied the end times.
I think he
Okay.
did.
Yeah, I think.
But then he wouldn't know if it
But
was
we
going to
need-
happen in his time or.
No,
We
but
need
I,
more Daniel in order to nail this down, and we're going to have more Daniel next week.
yeah, because I don't think, in this, I don't get that Daniel thinks this is the end. I think he thinks this is all going to happen, and then it's going to be good.
It is going to be good.
Yeah, not the end.
So the end is good.
This is going to be when Jesus comes back,
Yeah, so,
and that's it. That's
so,
where the prophecy ends.
so I'll just say this, okay? What I'll say is this. From our perspective, the end times are good, okay? Ultimately.
Well, yeah.
Because we win, right? Jesus wins. and we wanted to bring with him. And from our perspective, the phrase end times is probably the worst term for this that we could possibly figure out, because this is not the end, it's the beginning, right? We call it the end times because it's the end of this world.
Time on earth.
But there's a world to come that this is just the beginning of. And so we'll get to that as we go, and there's lots will come in Daniel and the rest of the New Testament, and the rest of the New Testament are very clear. So yeah, Daniel saw this as good. Daniel did see a war against the holy people. He saw the holy city being trampled. He saw all sorts of things. I mean, there's lots of things that is not good. Okay.
Yeah.
But that it'll get wiped out by the rock, by the Son of Man. That Daniel did see as well.
But did Daniel see it as the end of our time on earth? I don't think he took it that far.
Daniel did not have enough information.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Okay.
But we do.
Yeah.
And so when we look back, and I said this last week, the Old Testament is like a dark room filled with rich furniture, right? The New Testament is like a flashlight.
Yeah.
Okay, we go into that dark room with a flashlight, we can see the rich furniture in all of its glory.
Yeah.
Okay, before the New Testament, this stuff was pretty dark,
Yeah.
obscure.
Yeah, which is probably the main reason why the disciples didn't figure it out. Because
Well,
nobody had ever explained it.
Right.
Nobody ever, all these prophecies, they never get
well,
that.
I mean, certainly there was a lot of speculation about what Daniel was talking about. But yeah, there's lots of reasons the disciples didn't recognize Jesus immediately, and there's lots of reasons why the Pharisees didn't. And there's lots of reasons why what the Pharisees did, they still wanted to kill him.
Yeah.
So we're gonna call it tonight, though. So thanks very much. People on Zoom, I don't know how much of that you got. Are you hearing me now?
We heard it all. It's just that your
I'm guessing not.
video froze.
Well, God bless you, though. We're gonna record
We
this.
hear
If we
everything.
have recorded this, we'll have it available for you. And I'll work on that tomorrow.
Hey, Danish,
and we'll see what
can you hear the roses?
about next week.
Yes, we can
You did?
hear the roses.
Danish, can you give us a call? Can we have
Okay.
after class? Can we stay after class to talk for a
I
minute?
still think they're probably delayed.
Our phone number, why don't you call our phone number or landline so we can hear
Yeah, you can
better?
hear the roses.
Can you call 585-392-9702?
For a minute, sure. What's your phone number?
585-392-9702.
I will call you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you get the phone number? Got it.
So we didn't do chapter 8, not chapter 8 on the.
Yeah, we did not get to chapter 8, primarily because of Zoom.